Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you. It's great to be with you.
Now, let's talk about one of those issues, very important to our readers, to our listeners, the border. And you stepped up and went to the border. The National Border Patrol Council president said that he and his members consider you their advocate in Congress. You've really been leading on that issue. Now we've got this caravan coming up through Mexico with people from Central America who want to apply for asylum. What do we do about that? And the broader question is, when's this wall going to be built, and how do we make sure that Congress can deliver and that the president can deliver?
Sure. We need to build the wall. We need to build the wall now. We need to do far more to stop illegal immigration. It was very encouraging the first 6 months of the new administration that we saw illegal immigration numbers drop precipitously, drop by 2/3. But it is every bit as troubling now that in the last 6 months, we're seeing illegal immigration numbers climb and climbing steadily, climbing back to Obama level numbers. That ought to be completely unacceptable. That there are a lot of things we ought to do. Number one, we should pass legislation I introduced to fund the wall. It's legislation called the El Chapo Act, which provides that we would take the money criminally forfeited from El Chapo and from other drug lords and use that money to pay for building the wall. If Democrats are pretending suddenly to be fiscal conservatives and not want to spend the money, well, we can use the money drug lords have made violating our border, trafficking in narcotics, use them to fund border security. And Joel, I will say I was incredibly gratified by what you noted, which is a couple of weeks ago, the National Border Patrol Council, the union of Border Patrol agents across the country, formally endorsed me. And they did so because in the Senate, consistently, I've led the fight to secure the border, to stop illegal immigration. Indeed, Kate's Law, I'm the author of Kate's Law in the Senate. We need to pass Kate's Law now and stop violent criminals from entering this country. And that's what I've been fighting to do in the Senate. It's what I'll continue fighting to do.
Another issue where you've really led has been on the Iran deal. We saw President Trump speak today to President Macron of France. They have differences on the Iran deal. The French and the Europeans want to keep the deal in some way. President Trump has talked about either renegotiating it or tearing it up. Lots of different options. What do you think should be done with the Iran deal?
Well, the Iran deal, in my view, was catastrophically foolish and poses a grave national security threat to the United States. The inevitable result of the Iran deal is that if nothing changes, Iran will get nuclear weapons. And that's what President Obama and John Kerry knew when they negotiated it. And I believe a nuclear Iran poses the single biggest national security threat we have both to the United States and to our friend and ally Israel. What I think President Trump should have done is torn the Iran deal to shreds on January 20th. That's when I was running for president. That's something I pledged to do, was do it on day one. President Trump disagreed with me. He said he didn't want to tear up the deal. Instead, he wanted to keep it in effect and vigorously enforce it. Well, he won the election, and in the year and a half since then, I have consistently urged the president to follow through on that, and I'll commend the president. Several months ago, he decertified the Iran deal, taking on many of the defenders of the Iran deal in Congress and even in his own administration. And I believe the president is ineluctably on a path to ending the deal altogether because we're sending billions of dollars to Iran, the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. They're using those billions of dollars to target and murder American citizens, Israeli citizens, and under no circumstances, I believe, should Iran be allowed to acquire a nuclear weapon. When the Ayatollah Khamenei says death to America, I don't think that's empty rhetoric. I believe him. I think he means it. And I've been encouraged. I think President Trump is likely to follow through. Even though the Europeans want to make money in Iran, I don't think we should be pursuing business opportunities in Iran to make the Europeans happy at the expense of endangering the safety and security of Americans across this country.
You know what, Senator, I'd like to switch to another deal, actually, switch gears a little bit. you've been very critical of President Trump's threats to leave NAFTA. Without using the threat of pulling out of NAFTA, how can we get Mexico to renegotiate a deal that is currently favorable to them but unfair to us?
Well, I'll tell you, if you look at NAFTA, I represent Texas. I can tell you there are 2.2 million jobs in Texas that depend on international trade. Texans do very well when markets are opened up. What I have urged the president to do is use NAFTA renegotiation to expand our access to Mexican markets, expand our access to Canadian markets. And I think the single greatest opportunity there is the Mexican energy market. There are vast oil and gas resources in Mexico. Right now, their political and legal system does not adequately allow developing those. If we could codify in NAFTA, opening up that Mexican energy market, it would, number one, create thousands of good-paying jobs in Mexico, help growing a middle class there. That's good for Mexico. But number two, the place that they would naturally turn for the expertise to develop that oil and gas would be the United States, and Texas in particular. It would produce thousands of good-paying jobs in the United States as well. I think that is a great opportunity. Another area I've urged the president and the administration to go with NAFTA renegotiation is use it as a vehicle for regulatory reform to reduce the burdens on U.S. Job creators, on small businesses. And in particular, what I've encouraged the president to do is include within NAFTA what's called the REINS Act. I'm an original sponsor of the REINS Act. The REINS Act would provide that any economic regulation that imposes $100 million or more of cost on the economy cannot go into effect unless and until it gets an affirmative up-down vote from Congress. It would be the most far-reaching regulatory reform ever enacted. It would be tremendously good for jobs in this country. And the beauty of attaching it to NAFTA is under Trade Promotion Authority. That would go straight to Congress for an up-down vote, and the Democrats can't filibuster it. So we could enact long-lasting regulatory reform using NAFTA renegotiation. That'd be good for jobs throughout the country.
Now, I noticed in a letter that you and others signed and sent to President Trump, you said that instead of concentrating on tariffs and other trade rules, that we should encourage foreign companies to invest here with measures like expediting permitting times and cutting regulations and things like that. And I believe that the president actually agrees with you on that in large part. But my question for you is, what about China? Should the U.S. be open to investments from China, which is a country our national defense strategy is described as a strategic competitor that uses predatory economics?
There's no doubt that China is our most formidable and most dangerous long-term strategic adversary. And they are pursuing an aggressive military policy, aggressive cyber attacks, and expanding their influence across the globe. We need to take it very seriously. When it comes to trade, one of the areas I'm optimistic about is that I think the Trump administration is trying very hard to press back on China, and in particular to open up their markets. You know, they engage in very protectionist policies from China's perspective that shut down their markets. For example, they put in place a number of really significant non-tariff barriers. You know, a few years ago, I sat down with the senior leadership at John Deere tractors, and they described how incredibly difficult it is to sell an American tractor in China because they put regulations in place that essentially mean only Chinese tractors can get sold. I think the Trump administration is leaning in hard, trying to lift those barriers. That is a very good thing. When it comes to Chinese investment, I think we need to be cautious, particularly with regard to national security infrastructure. A few months ago, the Communist government of China was proposing investing significantly in the University of Texas in a China center. And I wrote the head of the University of Texas urging UT not to take the Chinese communist money because they were doing so as a propaganda effort to undermine free speech in this country. And thankfully, UT turned down the money and, in fact, has been leading the country. We're now seeing other universities turning down the Chinese communist money. I think that's a good thing, and I think we need to be very protective of freedom here in America.
Senator, in the hearings that happened on Capitol Hill with Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, your questioning was a shining moment in what I think for conservatives was an otherwise disappointing display, because no one really held Zuckerberg's feet to the fire the way you did on the question of censorship of conservatives. Could you tell us what you think the solution is to this problem? Because people are going online, they're finding out they can't share articles, or they're not getting the same kind of articles they used to get. What's the solution to this?
Well, I think, number one, the growing power of tech to censor speech is a profound threat. We're seeing now some 2/3 of Americans are getting their news through social media, and these tech companies are hard left. They are partisan Democrats, and what we're seeing is they're amplifying the views they agree with, those of liberal Democrats, and they are suppressing the views of conservatives. They are blocking conservatives, and you know it's the scope of the power is truly unprecedented. You know, you think back to the heights of yellow journalism when publisher William Randolph Hearst controlled much of media and, in fact, got America into the Spanish-American War. Well, these tech companies have power William Randolph Hearst could never have imagined. The ability, if there's a view they dislike, simply to silence it, so that if you put a post out there, you send a tweet out there, it simply goes into the void, into oblivion, and no one sees it. Likewise, they have the ability, if there are views they want to promote, to just have everything on your feed be the views they want to promote. That is invidious, it is invisible, and it is profoundly dangerous. Now, your question is a hard one and a good one. What remedies are there? And I would say there are principally two. Number one, the question I asked Mark Zuckerberg, the opening question was, does Facebook consider itself a neutral public forum? And he danced around and refused to answer that. The reason that question matters so much is under current law, Facebook and other tech companies have an immunity from liability. So if someone posts something on their site, they can't be sued for it. And it's under what's called the Communications Decency Act, Section 230. The entire reason Congress enacted Section 230 was under the assumption these tech sites would be neutral public forums. They would allow people to be speaking. And so the reasoning was, well, we'll protect you from being sued because it's not you speaking, it's somebody else. Well, if Facebook and the other tech companies are going to choose instead to be partisan political speakers, they've got a right to do that. They've got a First Amendment right to become and to be partisan political speakers. But there's no reason on earth they should get a special immunity from liability from Congress. You know, Breitbart, if y'all go on the radio and say something that's slanderous, you can be sued. If the New York Times prints something that is libel, they can be sued. So why on earth should Facebook get a special immunity from liability that nobody else does? I think that's one remedy. And then a second remedy is considering using the antitrust laws. By any measure, Facebook is larger and more powerful than Standard Oil was when the antitrust laws broke it up. It's larger and more powerful than AT&T was when the antitrust laws broke it up. And given that, I think we need to have serious consideration about the massive power we're seeing of these tech companies to subvert our democratic process.
Thank you so much, Senator, and we wish you the best, and we wish all of the best for the great folks of the great state of Texas. Thank you so much for coming on the show this evening.